Let's see, approval of the agenda. You guys got a chance to take a look at it? Very good. Got some interesting stuff tonight. Do we have a motion? So moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Minutes from the last meeting, December 3rd. Anybody have any suggestions, discussions, motions associated with that? So moved. Is there a second? There is a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, same sign. Very good. Moving right along. Public agenda. Let's see, scheduled items or no scheduled items we have here. As I understand, there is an off-agenda item. Ms. Giselle? If you would, please state your name and your address, and we'll try and keep this to about 5 minutes or so, and we'll go from there.
I'm Giselle Thomas. I am a city staff. I am in AmeriCorps Vista working with the city of Wichita. And I am working with the Youth Advocacy Coalition. I was hired on in July, and I am leading the coalition. And our mission is to create partnerships with organizations within the community that work with helping youth. And we want to make sure that we are helping our youth to curb violence and also make sure that we are helping to break the cycle of poverty, as well as improving our youth's quality of life. And we are doing that by creating referrals and resources and collecting those as well to be able to give those referrals agency to agency as well as individual to agency. And so I have referral forms for different organizations looking for youth activities and programs for their youth, as well as individual parents and different people within the community that know youth that may need help with different programs. And I also have business cards, so feel free to contact me. That is J.A. Thomas. That's J.A.THOMAS at wichita.gov. Or you can give me a call, 316-303-8057, and I'll be able to help with those things. And then we also have monthly meetings on Wednesday. We actually have our afternoon meetings, which are here at the Atwater Center at 1 p.m. And we now have evening meetings on Wednesdays as well, and that is the second Wednesday, of every month, and that is at 6 p.m. And so every second Wednesday, 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. here at the Atwater Center. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Giselle. Are there any other off-agenda items? All right, very good. Seeing none, we'll go and move into staff reports, and it looks like fire's back.
Yeah, we're back.
All right. Very good. Your timing's perfect.
Yeah. Evening, everyone. My name is Captain Woods, and I'm with Fire Station 10 at 2950 East 21st, and kind of give you a rundown, kind of what's going on with us, and then some of the recent alarm data. Fire activity within District 1 in the month of December was a fire at the 300 block in North Emporia. There was an electrical malfunction associated with a microwave and a stove, caused $50,000 worth of damage. There's also a fire in the 1300 block of South Laura. That was an accidental nature, $10,000 in damage. Fire in the basement storage room. Electrical issue on that as well. This was not here, but we did recently have a fire a couple days ago in the 2200 block of North Grove. A fourplex, multiple units within the fourplex were on fire at the time when we arrived, and that's still under investigation. Some activity, let me get to some of our run numbers for Fire Station 10. For the month of December, we ran a total Of those, 144 were medical in nature, 11 instances of public service, 4 structural fires, and then we did not run any hazmat calls that month. For the next month, we had run 182 alarms, 113 of those were medical in nature, again, 4 structural fires, either building or house, and then 9 instances of public service. Some department activity. We recently had recruits graduate in December. We also are starting interviews tomorrow for an additional 15 recruits that'll be starting in February, so we're happy about that. We've sent off a couple of our squads to get retrofitted in Texas for the purpose of being more beneficial for use during wildfire season. So they're kind of getting upgrades on their suspension and tires and those things, so they operate off-road a little better. We took delivery, I started to talk about this last time, but we had to run out, but we took delivery of command, a communication vehicle. What that is replacing our current command vehicle. It's going to be dispatched to large incidents. Anytime any of our assets are deployed out of the county, it will go with to support those assets. It's equipped with all the latest and greatest state-of-the-art communication equipment, some of which allows us now to broaden our reach of our radio system to mobile devices. So that's what I have here. I can Bluetooth this and have our phones now and basically talk on the radio. So there's a lot of interesting technology that came with that purchase. It's been getting retrofitted for the last couple months with the radios and equipment here in town, and then we're planning to take delivery within the next 30 to 60 days.
Good.
And start training our people on it. We did make some promotions today for captains and lieutenants, so we're happy about that. In addition to the equipment that came with the communication and command vehicle, we're also upgrading fire department radios. Just as technology progresses, we got to replace that equipment. Police has also been in the same situation with the radios. And then outside of that, we're moving forward with building hazmat and rescue apparatus. We've kind of been without a hazmat for a while, but we've been operating out of a reserve engine. We got processes going. We have a meeting going up, I think, here in a month or so on the first pre-build for that. And the rescue is not too far behind. So here, probably by the end of the year, we should have a new rescue and a new hazmat in the city. So I think that's about it.
Very good.
Any questions?
Questions from the board? All right. Seeing none? Thank you very much. Thanks for your service. Very good. See you guys.
Officer Terrell, 31 beat coordinator in the Patrol East Bureau. Statistics from Patrol East for the month of December, we had robberies were down 33% from 21 to 14. Aggravated assaults were up 23% from 46 to 57. Burglaries were down 28% from 83 to 59. Auto larcenies were up 14% from 137 to 157. And in auto thefts, there was no change. There was 57, and we're consistent with the month before. I'd say this time of year, with the weather starting to get cooler, though it wasn't too terribly cold today, remind everybody that car warming is against state law for the purpose of trying to prevent auto thefts, because that's a very common thing for us to see now take this time of year. And then as regards to the department, we have a class that's going to start at the end of this month on the 28th, which I believe they're trying to fill with approximately 30 officers. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Very good. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for your service. Library. Oh, no, forgive me, sorry. Sorry, I was eager.
That's all right. Yeah, I'm Officer Burnett, 45 beat coordinator. I'm also watching over 46 right now, so we get a fill in for that too. I was told you guys maybe want some stats for the year, so I got yearly stats for District 1. This is the entire District 1 here. Robberies, last year we had 141, which was up almost 16% from the previous year. Burglaries, 643, which was down 8%. Auto thefts was just under 500, and that was up 5%. Aggravated assaults, we had 500 for the year, and that was up 6% also. The biggest thing we had was the larceny autos, and that was up almost 20% from the previous year. All Patrol North and our community response teams are currently in the process of setting together some projects and targeting some known offenders for burglary autos and stuff like that. And we've also been speaking to all the neighborhood associations, just simply about locking the doors to your cars, because that is where the majority of this is happening. So, some food for thought there. Also, just make sure you guys are locking your doors and telling your neighbors to lock the doors, keep your lights on, just simple stuff to kind of keep your area safe anyway. The other thing I got, Officer Stark wanted me to bring this up, that the Hope for the Holidays, the meals for a lot of people who are in need or have problems putting together meals. They sent out for Thanksgiving over 110 meals, and Christmas we delivered over 100 meals to their houses.
Awesome.
Other than that, that's all I got, unless anybody's got questions. Yes, ma'am.
I missed the statistics on burglary. Could you read that one again for me?
It was down 8%, and we had 643 for the year.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay. You guys have a good night.
Very good. Thanks, sir.
Right on time.
6:30, my kids and I see firefighters going off their way.
Welcome.
We're up for you.
Start is 6
That's how often I get up here. How you doing? I'm Officer Larry Carlson, Wichita Police Department, Patrol South Division. I'm 21B, which is also known as the arena in the Old Town area. So for whatever reason in my mind, I'm thinking 6:30. Then I see the firefighters start taking off, and I was sitting in catching up on some things in my car there, and then I smelled plastic burning in the air, and I thought, well, maybe. And I thought, wait a minute, is it 6 o'clock? And then I'm like, God, it's 6 o'clock. So I hurried in here real quick, give you a quick report. Class 1 offenses in the for the Class 1 offenses, like robbery, egg assault, burglary, larceny, auto theft. In the South Bureau, overall, from 2017 to 2018 is up 1.3%, which is awesome. I mean, for what we're dealing with, we have a huge staffing issue, because I think we've lost over 50, close to 60 officers this year. So we're trying to get these kids up in these classes, or trying to get the applicable candidates to get into these classes is quite the challenge. So we're doing pretty well as far as that goes, but some of the pretty nice things that are like robbery in itself is down 8.8%. Egg assault is up 8.7%, so it's kind of a wash on that. Burglary actually went down in the south area, which is tremendous, because we had gone through several over the last couple of years of just ring. It seems like all the rings of thieves are down south, and that's kind of the funny part about South Side. But overall, 1.3% increase from a total class. So one offenses in 2017 was 4,049. Total for 2018 is 4,103. So that's pretty good. Other thing, interesting part as far as my area, in the Old Town area, in 2016 I tracked the amount of officers that we were using, including supervisors, in the Old Town area during Friday and Saturday night during closing. Because we look at it as, it's a South Side thing, but if you look at it, it's kind of like it's the city's hub where everything went down there. We do have an increase of officers that we have utilized from 2 years ago to now. And that's only 1.04%. When I did the whole mathematics on it, and started crunching this down, in 2016 we averaged 17.85. Get that little, that's little guys and girls. 17.85 officers per night during closing time, and then over this whole year we've done 18.22%. Which actually, the interesting thing is, 2 years ago we didn't have as many clubs, we didn't have as many people down there spending money, because if you go back to 2012 and 2014, we had the Doc, what we refer to as the Doc Howard's era, where throughout the whole Midwest, even like different types of, like Fort Riley would not allow their soldiers in the Old Town area because the amount of like different violence that was coming out of different clubs. So as that time goes on, plus all the different venues and events that are going on, more and more people are going down there. That I can't track. I'm sure there's somebody that can do that kind of stuff. But that's I can just tell every weekend because there's like zero parking. And we're not talking just like 2 feet from the club, but even the top floors of the parking garages are full every night. So it is prospering down there. They're starting to see the businesses do well in there. Other than that, things are just kind of status quo, real quick. Throwing out a bunch of numbers at you. Ask you, and answer any type of questions for anybody might have for that area.
Looks
I
good.
have one
Yes, sir.
quick question. I noticed here, in some time back, there was some talk about WPD changing their policy as far as hiring status was concerned. And one of the problems was tattoos. Did they ever get that, ever come to a conclusion as to what they was gonna do along that line?
I know that they've looked at, KHP did a huge study on it, I know that, and kind of figured out from that study that nobody, it really didn't affect anybody's opinion in ill favorable. It's just kind of like the way of time of, so. We have not done that. Our tattoo policy still is not a visible tattoo, and that's why you'll see, officers, a lot of times they'll have some type of sleeve either over a piece of their, arms or something, or you'll see officers when it's actually warm out, wearing like, it's 80 degrees out and they got long sleeves on. So we have not adjusted to that yet.
Okay.
I can only assume that it's just gonna have to happen because Dallas PD, I think it was actually advertising, hey, we hire with tattoos, and they showed a lot of different types of tattoos and stuff out there. It's just a matter of like, okay, it's gonna take a complete research on how you accept it, what's acceptable, is it gonna be a visual inspection for anybody that does it? There's a lot of things to think about because it's just gonna have to deal with that. If it's anything kind of questionable, then they'll probably have to be covered. But they have not done away with that yet,
Thank you.
hopefully. We'll see. This is
So,
the
on the topic of hiring, they were saying that you guys have a class at the end of the month and you're expecting, or you're wanting 30 people in it?
I think that the class that they're gonna have going into this one, they wanted 40, but I mean, it was just like, you need to try to find 40 people to shove in there. And the thing is, it's not just that we don't have 40 people on an application or 300 people on an application. Historically, Wichita has been probably, this is what attracted me from a person that grew up in Minnesota, went to school in Missouri, and attracted me over to Wichita, because it's had one of the best police departments since like the 50s, based off of what they're taught in their academies and what you can apply. A lot of times you go here, you can spend 2 years in the police department and go anywhere you want with a golden ticket to any other department in the nation. Plus, it's a big stepping stone for a lot of people that want to get into the federal end of things. It's every year we got one or two going federal as far as that goes. So it's a matter of finding the qualified applicant. There's some guys that have been gone. I remember kind of when things were getting kind of washy, they were towards the end of their career, and I was still kind of in my beginning of the career, so we're going back like 15 years ago, and asking them about how was it in the 60s and 70s when it just seemed like you didn't have a lot of public support. And they said, well, it's very similar, but it's different. I think now time is a lot more dangerous. So it's kind of like, is it really worth it? And so that plays a big role as far as like, can you get officers here? And you get people to that'll fill out the application. But it was kind of like an example that I had said before. Different areas, I think that we could target are different parts of the state as well as within the city. And instead of it, if you just widely open up and say these are the right people for us, you're gonna end up with some Barney Fife type people. Okay, and you really don't want that, because what you get is bad decisions consistently. You don't want to have bad decisions, especially when people's lives are on the line, or you don't want to ever get somebody in here that doesn't have proper ethical behavior. You need people that do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons all the time, not that, well, I guess they kind of made a mistake when they were 20 or something like that. I'm sorry, but some things do not change. So but law enforcement in Wichita is not any different than law enforcement in the country. Everybody is doing this. I think Tulsa was offered a $10,000, a lot of lateral classes, a lot of like if you have experience, you can go to another place. They're offering it, Tulsa recently was advertising a $10,000 signing bonus, and you slide into it to a lateral number. Denver was offering a lateral movement, which on paper looked pretty cool. I mean, because it was almost $100,000 for somebody that's got about 15 years on. But then you gotta wager out the cost of living and stuff like that to go with that. It's a complicated time all the way around, but you know, with Sergeant Vogel assigned to the academy recently. He used to be a weatherman, I believe. Pretty interesting thing, but he's kind of heading up and looking at the recruitments as far as different ideas. They had a sit down and a powwow of like what can we do to increase and better everything. I recently rejoined the recruiting team to kind of put my 2 cents into a lot of different things and hopefully go after different areas to find quality applicants. So that answers, I probably over answered your question. Yes, ma'am.
City offering a signing bonus?
No.
Oh.
No, I don't want to make comment on that. We're in a contract dispute type thing going on right now, so.
Very good.
What do you think is attributing to the shortage? I mean, do you have guys just retiring out, or?
Historically, I can tell you this, and I think, I've had that same question, I think when Mr. Johnson just started. Somebody hit us in a committee meeting and says, what's with the deal? What's the deal on this? This isn't something that just happened today. This is something that you gotta look back 10 years ago. 10 years ago when the economy kind of hit a crutch, and they say, okay, at the time, like, here's the best way I can say this. Anybody's ever seen National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation? When his boss cuts his bonus that he's expecting at the end of the year, it's kind of the same thing. Sometimes what looks good on paper does not look good on paper. 10, 15 years ago when we had, they had canceled academy classes. And so there was a cancellation of one, a cancellation of another, they put 6 in another, 14 in another. Well, historically, Wichita Police Department has had mass classes coming through. I was part of the mass classes that came through in about 2001. It was back-to-back classes, about every 3 to 4 months. You had about 25 officers hitting the street, and that was just trying to get everybody to float again. Kind of like what we're doing now, they're wanting to do back-to-back classes to kind of pick that stuff up. If they do that, you'll see that. Now what that does is you bring in a lot of people at this specific timeline, and if you look at a timetable chart over many years, you'll see that Wichita's always done this. And also, just like a bunch of babies are coming out every so many years, and when you have all these people leaving, so we're hitting to a point where we've got a lot of retirements coming, or we perceive a lot of retirements coming, and we don't have them coming in to replace them, then we're kind of stuck. So it's just, so the expectation to get back to where we need to be back is a couple of years of pounding officers through to kind of get back up into that where we can handle things.
Very good. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Thanks for your service. All right, is the library here? Camila, do you have a library report? You do.
Hi, good evening. Camille Alexander, standing in for Ann Ethan. The library is pleased to announce the start of a new after-hours computer lab taking place at Angelou Branch Library every Monday and Thursday evening from 6 to 9 p.m. The new program started last Thursday, January 3rd. Laptop computers are set up in the meeting room, and library technology training staff will be there to assist with resumes, online job applications, and internet research. They want to get the word out, and so the public can take advantage of this new free service being offered at Angelou Branch Library, and we will have it in the next District 1 newsletter.
Very good. Thank you, Camila. Park and Rec. No park and rec. Very good. So we're going to go ahead and move into new business. Item number 7 is probably the most anticipated item of the agenda. So we're going to listen to Century 2 Citizens Committee.
While she's setting that up, I'm Quinn Lake. I'm a musician with the Wichita Symphony and the Wichita Grand Opera Orchestra and any number of other creative music type things that call Century 2 home. And this is-
I'm John D'Angelo. I'm the Arts and Cultural Service Director for the City of Wichita. This is one facility I manage, among others.
Very good.
I'll just get started. The first few slides aren't too special. Last February, Mayor Longwell assembled a committee of citizens with diverse areas of expertise, charging us to dig deeply into the issues surrounding the future of Century 2, with the ultimate goal of forming an informed recommendation for the future of the performing arts facility in the Wichita area, be it a renovation, building new, or leaving the current performing arts facility as is. Yeah.
We'll just go.
Century 2, a little bit of the history of Century 2. She'll put up a timeline in a moment here. Century 2 succeeded the Forum, which was a building built in 1911, and it was a visionary building at its time. Century 2 was built in 1969. Actually, its 50th birthday is this Friday. There's going to be a birthday party at the end of the month.
I think we're going to go without it.
Okay, I'll try to illustrate the PowerPoint with my words.
You guys can get a copy of this. Maybe we can be able to print that out for you guys. Basically, it's just showing you some images of things that you'll be talking about.
The committee has 12 local citizens with a wide range of expertise, ranging from finance and law and real estate to people like me in the arts. We spent the last 11 months digging into the various studies that have been done about Century 2, learning from the folks who run the building like John, as well as the tenant organizations such as the Symphony and the Opera and Music Theater, and organizations that utilize Century 2 in big ways but maybe not as often, such as USD 259 and the Kansas Music Educators Association. We sought to learn their hopes and dreams for the future of their organizations and how their relationship with the building could potentially help or hinder that. In speaking with those who know the building well, as well as the consultants who have studied this in recent years, we have learned that the general public has very little idea about the multitude of aesthetic, structural, and worker safety problems that Century 2 presents. Most of them are either behind the scenes or the arts organizations go out of their way to mask them. This slide that you would see shows welding in unventilated basement hallways and stairs with giant chips out of them. The next slide shows drainage issues in the roof and damaged mechanical equipment, as well as a picture of a asbestos warning. So asbestos are contained in the building, but of course they would create a huge hurdle in the event of a renovation. There are some major worker safety issues. This slide shows a terrifying looking catwalk. The catwalks need to be replaced, and a lot of the building, is it safe to say that a lot of the building isn't ADA current? For example, the concert hall, the modern standard for ADA is to have aisles going towards the stage so that you can get to your seat easier. The walk from the parking situation to the seating is just awful, and this is something that hits close to home for me because my own mother couldn't attend my own performances because the walk was too much for her. So that needs to be up to date. The next slide, I think we're still working on it, shows rusty HVAC equipment on the roof. that is rusted and over 20 years old. And the roof is beyond its expected lifespan by about 5 or 6 years. The next slide shows a filthy ceiling, which is smoking stains from a different era of public policy.
We got visuals.
Oh, we have visuals. Okay. Get out of the way.
Thank you.
So we're on slide number 8 right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna need a little more light.
May I ask something?
Yes.
Are you asking to tear this building down for the little simple things you were talking about? Now, don't tell me you are.
Well, I'm getting to that, but we are trying to weigh all of the options and figure out what is the most financially
I can
viable.
tell you now, it'd be cheaper to remodel that building than to tear it down. I worked at Century 2 for EB Construction Company in we started in '66.
Sir,
Building
can,
that.
can we finish the presentation and then
Yeah,
we'll have public?
I'll be getting to a lot of that stuff. So
Where are you at?
I'm on the smoking stains. So next slide. There we go. And you can see the poorly maintained concrete outside the building. Next slide. This is a overhead shot of how Century 2 relates with the river and the surrounding downtown area. So our task as a committee, sorry, can you go back? Our task as a committee is just to focus on this, which is the facility for the performing arts. This is the expo hall, which is not our committee's territory. Some of the current challenges that the arts organizations have to deal with in Century 2. For one, it's a round building, and when you enter, you can go left or right. And there's a lack of pre-function communal space. One of the major issues is the sound bleed between the halls. So if the symphony is giving a performance in the concert hall, and there's a prom going back in the hall behind it, the walls behind the concert hall do not go all the way up to the roof. And so there's just an incredible amount of sound bleed. We can hear the bass and the kind of mumbling voice on a microphone. And there's been dozens of times where the symphony has reached like an epic climax and then this beautiful silence, but it's just ruined by the sound that you can hear on the other side of the hall. And I don't think that's acceptable for people who pay upwards of $80 for a ticket for these programs. There's inefficiencies in operations such as loading. There's not an efficient place for trucks to load and unload the sets for these big musical theater productions. There's no way for a large truck to get into the basement because the only driveway is like a very narrow spiral driveway. And therefore, we can't even perform many musicals that require larger sets. The backstage area is a total mess. We have a total lack of wing space, meaning the musicians don't have room backstage to store their cases and their purses and their personal belongings. Especially the bigger the production, the less space there is. And so we end up having to haul sometimes $50,000 instruments across a very large area, and it's dangerous, and it's just totally inefficient. There's no practice rooms, there's no rehearsal space, and that's a lose-lose situation for the arts organizations and for Century 2, because, for example, the symphony and the opera have to use the concert hall as a rehearsal space, and so they can't rent that space out for one-off performances, say by a comedian or whatever else touring company. The hall itself is too large for a symphony or an opera. I have performed in halls around the world and around the country, and I've never seen one that goes back as far as Century 2. If you go to Lincoln Center or Carnegie Hall or Symphony Hall in Chicago, etc., the distance from the stage to the back of the hall is about half as long, but it's taller. And symphonic music and operatic music was designed for that kind of acoustic. The CEO of the opera told me that it creates a casting problem because he has to hire singers that can project to the back of this massive hall. And just a problem. So another big issue is the shared backstage with multiple events. If we have Asian Festival going on and there's a symphony concert, then we have international superstar soloists who can't get to the stage because there's someone dressed up like a dragon in the way, for example, and there's no cohesion with whose space is whose, and it's just a shared area, not enough room for everybody. There's a lack of ceiling height, the stage is too small, and the ceiling strength. The CEO of the symphony told me that he just wanted to do something simple, like have an American flag displayed for a patriotic performance that we did, and the walls on the stage just couldn't support it. So that couldn't happen. And that's a tiny example of all of the programming creativity opportunities that were lost. Also, there's just a lack of patron amenities such as box seating for VIPs, a coat check, and things like that. All in all, the facility is 2.5 times larger than it needs to be, which adds unnecessary maintenance costs. If you imagine your house being 2.5 times larger than it needs to be, it's a problem. So next slide. I believe the arts should be a reflection of our modern culture. And one of the consultants we spoke with said that her discovery, she was out of New York, I believe. There are world-class performances being given inside of this substandard facility, and most Wichitans don't even realize what they don't have. Musicians in the community are like or not given the opportunity to see and perform contemporary shows because the infrastructure of Century 2 prohibits it. And so, as the slide said, for example, we can't even support a 30-year-old show like Phantom of the Opera, much less a contemporary show like Hamilton or whatever they're going to be creating over the next 50 years. Many creative staging ideas that the arts organizations have just simply cannot be accommodated. Next. So this first study that was done in 2014 by a consulting firm is perhaps a little outdated now, but it shows that over 85% of respondents believe there's a need for a new or renovated performing arts facility in Wichita. And this past year, in 2018, Project Wichita found, as you can read here, that there's a lot of enthusiasm, especially amongst minorities and people under 50 for a new or updated facility. Next. So the point of us being here this evening is simply to share the facts that we have learned about the building, as well as to continue to hear ideas and to take the pulse of the community. We are weighing all the choices, and our ultimate goal is to come up with the recommendation that best serves everyone. We've listened to each of the arts organizations, and the main thing that we've heard from everyone is that forcing them to endure a dark season during a renovation would damage them irreparably and probably bankrupt them. There's nowhere else in town that has the infrastructure for the types of performances that these organizations bring. The small staffs for the symphony and the opera, etc., would not be able to bear the logistical shift of moving temporarily to a new facility, and all of the organizations expressed a fear of permanently losing season ticket holders during the dark phase. Furthermore, the community of creative types such as myself use the symphony and so forth as a nucleus for a career in the arts in this community. The professors of music, for example, at WSU, find that job attractive, and they come from all over the country because it's a rarity to have the opportunity to teach and play in the symphony, and the symphony and the WSU School of Music have a close arrangement with one another. A lot of students, such as myself when I was a grad student, are attracted to Wichita for that same relationship, and we would potentially lose that. These organizations also serve as a backbone for arts education, such as the Youth Symphony, and many of us music educators depend on that. Closing down Century 2 for a renovation could incite a creative drain in the city that would be very difficult to recover from. Next. So when this committee was assembled, none of us came to the table with an agenda. We were all about the open mind and open ears. We were eager to listen to what anyone has to offer. We've learned the facts, and we continue to be committed to forming a recommendation that best serves the community. Next, please. We've been engaging with community groups around Wichita to spread the word about the facts. We've been to Rotary Club, KMUW, Engage ICT, Young Professionals of Wichita, and we have many more engagements with media and other organizations in the near future. We're committed to asking the question, not how can we deal with this now, but what will the standard for the performing arts be in the next 50 years? How can we imagine a solution that brings energy to our community and honors the arts as a relevant part of our contemporary culture? Our community deserves a beautiful, pride-worthy facility, and we believe we need to think big and act soon, and that doing nothing is not an option, and doing things halfway is also not an option. Next, please. So these are some ways that you can get in touch with us and to learn more. We really hope that you choose to get involved on this important topic and to spread the word and share your thoughts and ideas with us. And thank you for having us today. And if you have any questions, we'll be happy to hear them.
All right. Questions from the board? Go ahead.
How can you avoid a dark season though?
What is the, again, the thought process here, the committee's work, I'm supposed to be pointing at the mic and I have to listen. The thought process right now is to look at the options of renovation versus building new. If you look at a renovation option, for example, and I know that was suggested, what you would have to do is take a portion of the building and isolate it while you do the renovation to create the Performing Arts Center within the round building. And that includes the asbestos abatement that has to occur, as well as correcting the sound, as well as all the other challenges to that renovation. And then the question for the community is, what will the community allow you to do to the blue roof? Because if you look at the renovation options that Fisher, Dack, and Associates have shown us, it will require popping the roof up to get the type of space needed. Now, we're currently having another group look at, is there a way to take the floor and blow the floor out and drop it so you don't affect it? And based on the preliminary information, I visited with the architects over Christmas, there's not enough depth there to get that. So you're still going to have some protrusion above to change the roof line. Now, that may be acceptable. That may not by the community. We're not judging that. I think committee members have different feelings about that issue. The bigger issue is, when has explained, there's 160,000 square feet in that round building that we don't have a program for. If we move forward with the expansion of the convention center, which would move the Bob Brown to Main Street and fix the program that we need for conventions, then that would leave the round building for performing arts. That means you have 160,000 square feet that I don't know what we would use it for at this point. Now, that's the challenge, cost-wise as well. And so when you go in and you look at the renovation cost compared to building new, that's really what it's coming down to. We've got some preliminary numbers. Renovation cost for Century 2 now is going to be a significant number compared to building new. And I don't think you're going to see the numbers are going to be that dramatically. I think new is actually right now a little cheaper. Now, some of that depends on what you do. I mean, so I want to qualify that. Still have to address Kennedy Plaza and the urban issues that go with that, and parking.
Can we see some of the photos that we missed?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Here's the catwalk.
Yeah, that's the catwalk.
The catwalk that you saw there, that's the planking that the stagehands do have to use for us to do certain shows. We have to make use of that space. That's above the ceiling that when you're in the building, you don't see. And that's also where the asbestos is, so they have to suit up. There's protocol that they have to follow to be in that space.
I'm gonna go back to one and then let you go.
Okay. This was just to show you the timeline. One of the things that Century 2, if you recognize Century 2, replaced the form. And if you look at this period of time, it was about the same period of time, 60 years versus 50 years, same discussions occurring within the community, what to do. Remember, Century 2 was built to be a convention center and a performing arts center. It was the convention center and the performing arts center. Then in the 80s, you see 86, you see Bob Brown being built because, again, to meet the needs of convention planners, you needed a different type of facility. Century 2 is built on a pie. If you look at the floor, everything's on a pie shape. And when you, as convention planners will tell you, that's not a conducive space for them to bring their conventions. They want a 2-to-1 ratio. Also, in the assessments we've done, again, we went out and did assessments. We made no assumption that we should build new or not. But in the assessments that CSL did, Convention, Sports, and Leisure, is about the convention market, there's about $42 million worth of convention business that's left out there. So we need to do something for that piece of business. Then you gotta look at Century 2 Performing Arts. That's a different business model and a different business set. And then there's a third piece to this, and that's what we call local shows. Bridal fairs, home show, garden show, graduations. You've all been down there on a personal level, and you have an emotional attachment to the facility because it has a memory for you. So again, understand when we talk about Century 2, there's 3 pieces to it. This wonderful committee is only charged with performing arts. That's the names. You're pushing the wrong button. That's the hallway. This is the hallway underneath Concert Hall, just to the east. This is the track room that's below Concert Hall that you could rehearse in, but part of the problem there is the way the hall's designed. The noise goes up, so you can't have activity above and below. But during the summer months, from basically June into May through August, they're using this to do sets and build stuff for Music Theater of Wichita and what they do. You can see the terrazzo floors are failing. This is the drainage issues above the hall. Literally what happens now above the concert hall, public works staff has to go up there after large rains and empty the buckets. That's a reality. And you say, well, let's just replace the roof. The roof is $5 to $6 million. We've delayed that decision to make a bigger decision to make sure it's the right investment.
Quentin, will the committee be submitting a report to the council, or what is your final work product? What do you guys?
Yeah, we will, and hopefully, we're hoping that will be within the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
Yep.
So, kind of speaking to like the dangers that this has caused, like the wear and tear obviously does not lead to the safest environment. Do you guys know how many accidents performers have had or maintenance crew has had working in this facility?
We could get you some numbers that, we do track accidents, obviously. I don't know how much, you would attribute it directly to it. I mean, we do have falls and especially on the outside of the building because of failing concrete. But yeah, we have those. But I don't know the number to give it to you. they're related to that. Injuries internal to the building are pretty minimal because most of the staff, and this is where the symphony musicians, this is where music theater, they are so used to using the building, they kind of know where those pitfalls are. So we're fortunate because we don't have many accidents from that perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Can you give us a ballpark, as far as the cost, as far as renovating versus building a new one?
Here's the scary number part. The truth of the matter is, it could be up to $250 million to renovate it. And again, that depends on what you want to do with it. A new one could be about $176 million. Now, that's not including the convention center side. The convention center side's probably another $140 million to $160 million. So as the mayor said at a meeting that I was in, he said if he had $500 million, he could fix the problem. But it's a big number, guys. And we've got to think beyond just the building and think in terms of the urban space around. We're doing this wonderful development with the new Ball Diamond Across. How does that connect? How do we create the next Millennial Park? How do we create this environment where this is truly a community front door and an asset? How do we get that? That's what we need to think in terms of.
Are there some comparisons that other peer cities have built for performing arts centers that would rival ours, or what we'd like to do?
Yes, we've provided to the committee, Bob Campbell, who is with Fisher Dack and Associates, has provided them a range of costs, including, Kansas City, if you want that one, it's like $1,200 a square foot, down to $800 a square foot. It really depends on what we want, what do we aspire? And I think it is a time for the community to really look at how do we want to get there, whether it's renovate or building. And then whatever we do, we have to do it in phases. So if you build new on the river, then you move the performing arts groups in, then you make the decision on the round building. Whether it becomes development property, whether it's something else, some other use, or you demo it. Those are your decisions. If you renovate, then you have to renovate half of it, then go back and fix it. There's a 25 to 45% increase in cost that contractors are going to charge because, again, they have to mobilize and stage in 2 phases.
So I definitely am following on all the logistics of this is things that have to happen. What are we doing to ensure that this will be competitive? Because, we're trying to advance Wichita, make our downtown, beautiful, people want to come here, but also we want to attract shows. So how are you all looking at being a competitive performing arts center in comparison to, Oklahoma, Kansas City, Missouri?
I think part of that has started through the use of Bob Campbell and Fisher Dack and Associates. They're a nationally known planning firm. They do just facility planning. They have architects, they can do architectural work, but that's not what they do. They do planning. So the building program that we're talking to you about tonight, the single hall with the ancillary space to keep music theater whole, the idea of a hall that can flex, that could do what Gwen has described, that could go from a 2,200 seat hall down to a 1,300 or a 1,600 seat hall. Those are the types of amenities. The pre-function space. If all of you've been to a concert or to an activity at Century 2 and have stood before the house doors open in a crowded hallway, imagine what it would be like if you had a space where you could sit down, actually come early, get something to eat, where you had more space. The current standard is 12 square foot per person. We're woefully under that. If some of you will remember, before Lion King got here in 2012, the women's restrooms would back up so bad that there was no way for them to go to the restroom during intermission because there wasn't enough time. Now, we spent $4 million in fixing the hall to improve that. We did nothing on the men's side, and part of that was also to get Lion King. Lion King was here in 2012 for 30 performances. It generated $4.5 million in ticket sales. to get Broadway shows, we have to be competitive. But we also have to be real conscious of our current organizations and the quality of what they're doing, and how do we prepare them for the next 50 years.
With general funding, we're talking in the neighborhood of $200,000 relative to the most recent. 200 say that? Million. Relative to the last major effort that we actually did with the arena. Is this same comparable? No. How much was that? Forgive me.
115 million.
That was 115. Okay, so we're
yeah, they had
nominally double.
They had 202 million that they raised through the sales tax, but it only cost 100.
Okay.
And again, I think part of the discussion for the community has to be that if we do a referendum vote, which is going to be a discussion, I mean, there's no sense in hiding that issue, but the question has to be, how do we make sure that you have some endowment built in so that you take care of it for the future?
Yep.
I have a question. So what's the time frame or expected time frame for both? If we were to renovate and if there were to be a new Century 2 build?
The current recommendation from this committee should be ready within the next 30 to 60 days. By mid-February, they'll have the recommendation to City Council. It'll be then up to the council to take action. I think the Project Wichita will be part of this discussion. They have identified that as part of one of their quality of place, and I think you'll see some of that discussion occurring there. If it has to go to a referendum vote, probably the earliest you'd see it would be in November this year, which is a general election right now for the mayor and 3 other council members, or it could go to a special election in the spring of 2020 if it was to go into a special referendum vote. Again, when I talk about a referendum, it doesn't mean all of this will be paid for by that. There will probably be other funding sources, such as guest tax, that will be utilized to fund some of the convention project, as well as there are CIDs and some other options that we can look at.
I have a follow-up question for you. Can you go back to the slide for me, please? That stated 85% of the respondents in 2014 said that they would like to see a newer renovated building. At the bottom of that slide, it mentioned something about minorities that you all had spoken with. Who are you all defining as minorities according to this?
That information came from the Project Wichita, the 14,000 surveys, the focus groups. They went out, and I think they even came to this group as well as other groups. So they were looking at a broad cross-section of the community. That's what that's referencing.
Are those available online, the groups of people that they met with? Because I know Urban Professionals was one of the groups.
Yes.
When we say minority, sometimes it can be so broad, so I want to make sure we are truly capturing the diverse population that we have here in Wichita, which leads to my last question for right now is, which organizations that use Century 2 Performing Center on a consistent basis have you all spoken with? So for example, the Wichita Lynx has a Botillion program. They've been doing it for the last 40-something years. Have you all sat down and met with organizations like them to say, what are your needs, what are your concerns, how can we, and from your perspective, having utilized the building for over 40 years?
The C2 committee has met with them. They've met with all the user groups within the facility. The study that you see that was done in 2014 reached out further than that, including French University, WSU, reached out to all performing arts group in 2014. And that's why, again, qualify this, that, again, things change between 14 now and 19, and so we want to make sure that we, don't oversell this, that some of this information is starting to get dated. But the group itself, the C2 committee, has met with all the user groups.
Thank you, sir.
So is this happening, or is it all or nothing? Or are we gonna get a performing arts center and maybe not a convention center, or everything's happening, everything's on the table?
The District 1 council member told me everything's happening. I thought I'd just throw that out there. I'll probably hear about this tomorrow. The decision based on the C2 committee is to make a recommendation to the electeds. That should occur within, again, by mid-February. That recommendation, I'm sure, will keep that group somewhat intact to continue to work with the Project Wichita group and others to talk about how do we move this project forward. Because again, think of it in terms of two projects here. We've got a performing arts piece, we've got a convention piece, and we have to be honest as a community, what is our aspirations? And then, from that will be a discussion about how do we move it forward.
I actually love performing arts, and so I want to see this project happen one way or another.
Something has to happen.
Yes, yes.
So the only question I have regarding it is, so when we renovate, or whether we renovate or build a new one, are we gonna have to do new, cause you talk about access to it. Are we gonna have to build new entryways, new access ways?
Again, what path you choose, you'll have to address that. The question, right now, when we load in a large show, we had Neverland perform at Century 2 at Christmas. There's 4 semi-trucks that it comes in on. They all unload on Douglas, on Kennedy Plaza, because we have to push everything across the building into the center of the stage. The building was designed with a ramp that goes down, but in those days, in '69, the truck length was shorter. Now, okay, well, you just straighten out the ramp. You could do that, but you still don't fix the problems down in the basement because there are some low issues with the height requirements, so you still have challenges with that. So it's more complicated than just a ramp fix or that. But yes, accessibility will have to be addressed. Think in terms, if you've been to a graduation, which usually occur in convention hall, or you've been to convention hall, if you've been in it, it seats 5,000 people. There are no elevators in it. If you want to get to the balcony, you have to go up through concert hall or the one elevator in exhibition hall. So we have significant ADA issues we have to address. Not that that can't be fixed, it can. But we have to think in terms of all those issues and how do we get and what's the best result. We have a building program that FDA did for the performing arts. We have a building program that Populous did for the convention side. So we know what our needs are. It's really now making a decision what path we're going to take.
So, when this gets brought to the council members and it passes, what will your guys' role be from there? Are you going to be a part of that?
Again, I don't know that we can answer that. That'll be up to the council. I think council will get their recommendation. My guess is the council will want to continue to have these folks involved. I know, from having worked with them now since February, they're very interested in continuing. What that role may be, I don't know yet.
Okay, thank you.
Talk to us about location. Right now, the performing arts is where it is. We locked into that by any means, or?
Yeah, when we studied this, again, we started this in 2013. We looked at an off-site location at the old Alice Hotel site. We've looked at the sites south of, by Gander Mountain in that area. So I would say that this committee isn't locked into that. I would also tell you that this committee isn't really charged with doing that, to select a site. Sure. But I think that has to be part of the discussion.
Right.
Now, one thing I will tell you, there is an economy of scale to the city to keep the two facilities close together, because from a staffing side, put my other hat on here, there's some shared staffing that helps reduce the cost. Is it significant enough to make that the driving decision? No. But if we can keep them close in proximity, there is some shared opportunity there. Large conventions will occasionally use concert hall to do their presentations. And so having the two close together would be a nice thing if we can, if we can make that happen.
Is there a number for the money that we've missed out on these past couple of years because we were not, so like have performing arts come to us and we just weren't able to accommodate them? Is there a number of how much money we missed out these last couple of years because we were not a performing arts center that could accommodate X, Y, and Z?
It's hard to qualify that number for two reasons. One reason, when you look at the schedule of Century 2 and you look at the calendar, we don't have many dark days, as Gwen explained, and the reason for that is because we're using the main hall as a rehearsal space. if we build a new facility, one of the things in the program is a high-quality rehearsal space. So now the symphony can go to the rehearsal space and rehearse without bothering others and without being bothered. Now that frees up available dates, so that opportunity grows. Right now, Theater Guild brings shows in, or Theater League, as some of you may know them of. They bring shows in basically Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because those are the only available dates they could get. It doesn't mean they don't want to bring them. There are shows, like we said, Phantom, Hamilton, that, again, we get their writers, we see if we can accommodate, and we're told no. And so we can't even bid for them. So there are opportunities out there, and probably more than you realize, that would allow them to have more performances in Wichita. But right now, we just don't have the dates available because of the conflicts.
Thank you, sir.
In the long, I don't know how like renting space works, if all of the rehearsals have to be done in the concert hall versus a rehearsal room that doesn't exist at the moment. If they could use a rehearsal room, would they be saving more money? But so how much money are we planning on the department saving from not having to use such a large space for rehearsals? Do we have?
Well, I don't know if it's I can give you a direct number of how much. I mean, there's a rack rate that we charge for the space that the organizations pay. Now, your local tenant organizations get a discount based on the number of performances they do in the season. The non-local, the Broadway shows don't. But there's a rack rate for that use of concert hall, and whether you use it for rehearsals or whether you use it for a performance, there's a performance rate and a non-performance rate. If we can get a rehearsal space for them, then yes, there's some cost savings, but more importantly, what it does, it frees up available dates, which now increases the revenue we can generate, both in terms of ticket sales as well as economics for the community. Again, go back to Lion King because it was a biggie. Doesn't mean that's all we're doing, but Lion King, 33% of the people that came from outside of Wichita.
One more question. So Century 2 and Expo have a very large footprint. If you do end up raising the buildings, you're going to use significantly a lot less square footage of that footprint. Do you anticipate some economic growth and development in the unused space, and do you think that would be attractive to other businesses to come in and build and develop around there?
Absolutely. I think that's part of the discussion that has to occur as this moves forward. Looking at a master plan of the entire East Bank, we've got a West Bank master plan now with the Ball Diamond and what's going on there, but you've got to look at the East Bank and say, okay, how do we need to develop this side of the river, and where those opportunities, and we have identified some of that, some private development opportunities. So yes, we've got to look at that as well as how do you create this urban space, this urban grid, again, that surrounds Century 2, because there were decisions made in the 80s when they built Expo. If Century 2 was built with roads that went completely around it with the concept of the porte-cochere, you drop off at the different halls. In 1980, they made the decision to take out that road that connects it, so now we have a west side, which everybody recognizes is we kind of turn our back to the river. And how do we embrace the river? I think we all have to talk about that. River Festival, as you all know, uses the area. How do we create that space that both is conducive for something like that to continue to occur, but also at the same time allows for these other developments?
I think if the numbers are gonna run close in cost, my thoughts are on leaving an open space. I think that we should heavily entertain renovating. Just get what you need out of the space to make it accommodatable, if that's a word, for all the end users, and then hope to generate more revenue in the future. And the reason I say that is because the library just moved into a new building, and they don't have a suggested use for that building either. So just to have another vacant area, I don't think would be good for the city. So that's just my thoughts.
No, I think that leads into that whole idea about master planning, that whole site. we are looking at some other uses for the library, and there's been a lot of ideas presented. I was actually at a meeting today on that issue. But I think the whole site has to be looked at. And whether the Performing Arts Center stays on that site or moves to a different site, that's still part of that discussion, but you need to look at it.
What I've heard at least so far is that our convention space is kind of landlocked right now with being able to go ahead and, well, first of all, not able to go ahead and actually bring in their type of conventions based off of their own heights and ceilings and that type of stuff. Assuming convention space might actually stay where it would, as a hypothetical, how much more space would they want in a perfect world just for convention space?
The convention program is 150,000 square feet of contiguous exhibit space. Currently, the box, this box, is 92,000 square feet. However, 28,000 of that is under a 14-foot ceiling. So of prime space, only 62,000 of that is prime. The program calls for 150,000 square feet, 30,000 square feet of meeting rooms, and a 30,000 square foot ballroom. Now, in the convention design business, you have to multiply that times 2 to 2.5. So you're talking about a facility of 400,000 plus square feet. Right now, the discussion is about pushing that box all the way to Main Street, maybe some on towards the riverside, so some of the ballrooms would reach out over to the river. That's the concept. Reuse of the library has been discussed about possible for meeting rooms and other uses. Is that the best purpose for it? Perhaps, perhaps not. That needs to be decided. But that's what the program is for the convention side.
If Century 2 were to actually stay where it is, what limitations does that actually make on convention?
The convention side, it actually makes the most sense for it to stay where it is because you need a convention hotel. And right now that is the Hyatt. That connection is critical. So the convention center staying where it's located right now makes the most sense. So you keep that connection because that will be another issue with event planners if there's not a connected headquarter hotel.
Okay.
So if you move the convention center, you have to find another headquarter hotel. And right now, this makes the most sense.
Okay. With that said, we're going to go ahead and take it out to the public for any questions, comments.
We have.
That mic, John, we can take that mic for each person too, so y'all can. Thank you.
Please state your name and your address, and thank you very much.
My name is Brock Booker, 1700 North Vassar, so District 1. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to Councilman Johnson and the committee. Good evening. I just want to provide a little bit, shed a little light, and maybe draw perspective a bit, being I came to Wichita as a performing artist and as a student at Friends University in the spring of 2009. I received some of the higher scholarships. Dr. Cecil Riley at Friends University, I was in Singing Quakers and in student government there. And I've been in the facility, I feel like it's a second or third home. I was, I think it was 2015, I was a member of the symphony chorus and chorale that did Handel's Messiah. And we're talking anywhere between 150 instrumental musicians and at least 200 for chorus. And it was tight, believe me. So through that experience, I understand and I feel your pain as a fellow musician there with all of that. I believe if you Google it's the Becknell Family Performing Arts Center in Pittsburgh, Kansas. And so the way I see this in my mind, as a performer that's been in the halls, I don't work at Century 2, but I've used the facilities quite a bit. I feel like the county could cover the expense for the convention side just at Century 2 if necessary, and let them kind of deal with that. I think we need to unpack the different organizations and institutions in the facility in the way that if it's music theater and the symphony, if it's the opera and so on, they all don't have to be under the same roof to be successful. Now, with that said, I think they still need to be remotely, proximately, I make up words sometimes, sorry, in this area. And I'm gonna go further. Musicians will leave the community. I will say it again. They'll leave the town and they won't come back. They'll find new contracts, they'll play elsewhere, and we'll be really sorry. I was at the ICT on Tap at Roxy, and a lot of this was discovered. I feel like this is the first time it's hit you guys, so maybe, so that's kind of my thoughts, and I think some things that the city and the committees around town should look into. And I did take the survey. I don't know if that reached the universities. I think it was a grave mistake to not include the students at the varying universities. And I feel personally the Garvey family should have been more involved in the process, and Garvey. And quite frankly, I'm comfortable enough saying publicly that they have enough money to purchase Century 2, or they could, you know. So anyway, I think I'm finished, unless there's any questions.
I would just say, you'd mentioned people that you wished would have actually been contacted. Can you at least
Sure.
give a synopsis of what their inputs might have been, in your perspective?
Can you go further on? I want to make sure I'm...
So universities weren't actually contacted. What do you think the universities would have said? What do you think the Garveys would have said? I mean, just based off of your relationships.
Sure. Good question. I believe that they would have indicated more of the same. KMEA, you know, it's very crowded. Just in the walk space as groups are arriving with varying instruments, you know, and it's more to the 1,000 pounds of sound. When you've got people coming in with harps and woodwinds, they can't stand out in the cold with those instruments. Otherwise, they'll be ruined. And we're talking about instruments, you know, these are instruments that people are writing grants for to the Koch Foundation that cost thousands of dollars. You know, I think I was reading one of the grant reports that violin strings, one student was requesting $4,000 to $5,000. So those are the types of cost for those students that want to pursue performing arts as a career, if that helps.
You're saying musicians will leave if we go dark or if we don't do anything?
Both. Both. Something has to be done. I think we need to look at remodeling another compartment building. And I think that's what Joseph Shepard alluded to. There is interest. That's the other thing for me is, you know, it would be nice. I didn't know that. that minorities were interested in that. And personally, I want the community to look like the community on the stage, where you have more Latinos and more African Americans in the symphony and in the opera. And in that, I think it was in Philadelphia where that was done. It was kind of an urban symphony. And that's, that shouldn't be uncommon. It should be more common. So anything that would do that or bring in, and two, I guess lastly, as I close, we're known in New York. Wayne Bryan is famous in that area. So they know who we are. Music Theater of Wichita, Grand Opera, and the symphony, I believe the maestro lives in New York, if I'm not mistaken, and this is kind of he splits the time. If I'm correct on that, thank you. So, yes, I think that if we were able to connect those dots and those different things, I think we can really improve the power of our downtown immensely, exponentially. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Just one more question.
Sure.
If you were able to go ahead and do whatever you wanted to do, what would you do?
Whoa, that's that's kind of putting me on the spot, but I don't have the money. If I had the money, it would be a done deal, I guess.
But assuming there's going to have to be significant funding coming from some source, I mean, assuming the funds would be there.
Okay. I would see maybe the county and state or some other entity, if it had to come or be a partnership to come, and the current building focusing on the convention side. Personal experience, the exhibition hall is good. It could be flipped to where from what I understood from the ICT on tap conversation, to accommodate some concert series, some recitals, some things like that. But the exhibition hall is very cold. It's very cold. I did a performance there. It was my band at the time. And I was freezing. I got sick after that performance. It was that cold there for me. And I think they need to focus on the conventions and big gatherings, if it's faith-based organizations, things of that nature, bringing, and marketing just focused on that. And then it could be other organizations, the symphony, music theater, et cetera, to finding somewhere along the river or wherever it is that best meets the needs of the people that, and maybe there's a new survey or a revised survey that needs to come out. I don't have all the ideas, or all the answers. So I think, it's impossible to have, that's a tough question.
No, it is. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Councilmember members of the District Advisory Board, I just have a comment really for the committee. No disrespect intended, but if you're going to sell the community on spending $180 million, which I think is a ridiculous number, I think you could do it for a lot less. But having said that, we're not going to care whether the air conditioners leak, because that's an easy fix. The photos you showed of stairs and those things are basically irrelevant. What did matter was you talked about the needs of the performing arts community. So when you're talking about the fact that you don't have room to practice, that's what the community is going to have to hear to get someone like me, which is just kind of an average citizen, to be able to vote for spending that kind of money. So get away from the fact that the building has needs, because those are not that hard to fix, as the one gentleman pointed out. Those are easy fixes. What your problem is that the building it's too big in one area, it's not high in another area. Why is that?
explain that, educate the community on that. Because otherwise, you're gonna try to do a referendum to raise $120 to $130 million. You better have a good reason why it costs that much when you built the arena for $130 million in construction costs or 20 or whatever it was. You built a library that has a lot of amenities and those things for $30 million. You start throwing numbers around like $180 million, you better have that very well documented. And finally, I would say that if you're gonna go forward, and I don't care if you tear the building down, I know a lot of people care about the blue roof. You know, I was here when they built it, and I don't care if it goes. I want the area to be good, I want it to look right, I want it to be done right, but you better talk about exactly where you're gonna build this, because people are gonna care about that. So those are the things as you go forward, and I know a little bit about what council members hear. So if you're gonna try to persuade council members to go forward on something like that, you better have a few more things lined up. No offense, John, but I think that you need more information.
Your name,
Great.
Thank you. Anyone else?
You got 30 seconds.
30 seconds. James Rosewood, 4518 Greenbrier. And my comment is this, I've listened to this, and I've listened to the cost of this, but, John, this is a question for you. Small outfits in Wichita cannot use Central 21 for meetings and things. I know when we can't afford to come in there. The cost is just too high. And under this building that you're going to do, you need some rooms or some spaces that you can come in and rent without renting out the entire building. Because our 501c3 organizations can't afford to use that building because I think the cost is outrageous. And from listening to what I'm hearing here today, the amount of money that's gonna be spent to either rebuild or repair, I can see the cost going up. So that's my concern, is do something and make it available to the local people in the city of Wichita that we can afford to use it. Thank you.
Very good. Anybody else?
Dave Cook, College Hill. I'm curious, do we expect to get a building that will last 50 years without any problems from building experimentally? Because that's part of what's wrong with Century 2, as it was part of what was wrong with the Corbin Education Building on the campus. They built something experimental because they wanted to do something different. And building that to last 50 years, you can ask Frank Lloyd Wright what he ran into when he built his buildings, because all of them are horrid for maintenance. So if we're gonna try to do something, and I understand what the performing arts people want, what the city needs is to be looking forward like that, 50 years down the line. The Chung Report has told us what we've been doing wrong for the last 30 years. If we're gonna try to build a better community, we've got to balance experimental design and trying to do something that's gonna last forever with how do you keep it cheap? That's not easy. Anyhow. I am curious, was Century 2 built this way as an experimental kind of thing? I wasn't here then.
I don't know that I would say it's experimental.
It looks like an experimental thing. Well, I mean, that's what you do when you want to build for 50 years, you experiment.
That's what architects do.
Yeah, that's what architects do.
Any other comments, questions from the public? Without that, we'll go ahead and bring it back into the DAB. Discussions.
When I ran for mayor, I had a phone call, and especially because I put out some flyers and stuff, remember, Aaron was part of my team, to try to bring some attention to the effect that the discussion was being held behind the scenes of replacing Century 2. shut up, because it's already been decided. Any committee you form will be discarded, but it'll be a good showplace for that we did our due diligence, that the decision has already been made, and that was almost 4 years ago. I don't see anything different this time, that's why I've been quiet up to this point. That, we're just really kind of beating at the wind so the decision can be, look like it's been made soundly. That's my comment, and I was soundly said, don't bring any more discussion about, because the powers that be have already decided this.
Any other discussions?
I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I mean, it's all a part of bringing it to us, bringing it to the community. I do know some of the people that are on that committee, so I do know that it is a diverse committee. I know they have people from all different types of businesses and agencies. So I don't know necessarily that it is already decided, but I do know they're doing their due diligence to do their homework and to do their assessment of what currently is the status. But whatever we decide is not going to be our draft decision anyway. We'll give our input, but I don't think that as a democratic process that we should ever say something is already decided, because that defeats this whole purpose. So, but again, I do know the work that has been done behind the scenes, and I know some of the people on the committee.
Just for clarification, our task today is to go ahead and actually just provide feedback. So that can actually happen through discussion, but I presume that Councilman Johnson would appreciate our thoughts and feelings on it as he helps to come up with his own decision.
Question, but should we hear what the other models and thought frames are before we give our perspective on the performing art building?
Yeah, my thoughts today would be, anything we're discussing right now is certainly not final.
Right.
We're just commenting based off of the information we've actually received now, and I suspect there will be more that will actually come in the future. But based off of what you know now is just what I would recommend that we try and provide some input on.
Is this like option A, option B, it's definitely happen either way, or nothing could happen? Can you clear that up? It's happening.
I mean, it's either gonna get renovated or.
Something has to happen.
The committee has come to the conclusion, that's part of our purpose, as part of this engagement that we're doing with you. Do nothing's not an option. So something has to be done, and to be very honest, the committee has not finalized a renovation option or a build new option. They're out here listening to the public to get information. I appreciate Greg Ferris's comments, because I think he's, absolutely, I think we want to make sure we're clear on what those shortcomings are of the current facility, so that we're not, again, there are some deferred maintenance, and we recognize that. But there are also what we call best practices in the industry, and that's also what we're talking about when we talk about wing space, depth of stage. When I talk about Lion King, the stage depth required us to shorten the type of performance that we saw versus other venues that could produce it in a bigger fashion. So those effects do occur. The great news is with the Symphony Music Theater, what the audience feels and leaves with is a real positive. But there are things that compromises being made because of the facility and its design.
Did you say that, okay, so you made a comment on talk being had about the vacant, Central Library, building, or the old one anyways. Is it a topic of discussion to try to incorporate that into the entire plan for, like, if, let's say, you guys leave that area and rebuild or even renovate, is it being talked as part of that plan, overall plan?
I think, the conceptual discussions we're having now, and these are really just very concept thoughts, is what sort of other functions could move into the existing library if you do want to keep it. The other idea is, could it be connected to the convention center if you do expand the convention center? Could it provide the meeting rooms and some of the ballrooms that we discussed? I mean, that should be looked at as well. Is that really the right use for it, I guess, is the question. And again, we haven't gotten that far with it. So we're trying to look at the entire site. When we show the dotted line, what we're really trying to stay focused on is that site. Doesn't mean we wouldn't look at something off-site. It simply means most of that property, with the exception of the Hyatt and the building on the corner of Douglas and Main, the city owns most all that property. So how do we make best use? So we, again, land acquisition costs, which aren't, again, they shouldn't be the driving force, but it just helps to look through that.
I would just say when like the time for proposals come, if, we kind of decided something has to happen, which means something's gonna cost a lot of money, no matter what route we take. I think we should really take the Showman's comments seriously, because I think that is what I was the most intrigued in the presentation as well. And I think a lot of our questions came from opportunity costs. What have we missed out on, and what are we going to miss out on? Because I don't know what I've missed unless you tell me. You know what I mean? So I want to know what shows I could be seeing. I want to, I want to know how much St. Louis or Kansas City has been making from performances because of what they can provide that we can't. And I think, we need to have that conversation in depth and not just here are some numbers, but here are all of them, and let me provide them to you, and this is what we could have. And from the sounds of it, we're most likely gonna be bidding, or it might be smartest if we have a new building. And I heard a lot about saying like, it's too big for what we need. It's not a good use of space. So being able to say the space that we're getting rid of, it's gonna be put to use X, Y, and Z, because saying we're gonna take away and not give isn't gonna roll over well with citizens, especially if you're asking them to pay more for getting essentially less when you're looking
And
at
a lot of the renovation options don't even address a lot of the main issues, such as the backstage area being too small, and even the sound lead issue, if I remember correctly, like isn't totally solved. There's just no way to completely solve it.
Depends on what you use the rest of the space for.
Right.
The question, again, on information, just so you all understand, we've been doing this since 2013. There are volumes of information out there. There's a cost-benefit study that you can look into that'll give you some of that information. On the convention side, it's about $44 million that we're missing. That's a conservative figure. And again, that is based on an assessment that was done. It's harder to do with the performing arts side because of the issues I've explained to you. But there are lots of studies out there, both in terms of the building program, the cost benefit, the assessments. And when we talked about whether or not we reached out to universities, we reached out to all universities in 2014. They were all engaged. This will require private funding. There's no question about that. So this is not going to be purely on a referendum or a tax. It's got to have private funding involved in it too. So it's going to be a mixed use of funding sources to make this happen.
Very good. I'm going to deviate from what we typically do. We've already brought it back into the board, but I believe that there's another gentleman that would like to speak on that. I'm going to take it back out to the public just this once. Yes, please. If you would come up to the podium, state your name and address. And
My name is Craig Tolson. I'm for Crestview Lakes, Wichita. I have to agree that in order to make some kind of sound decision towards this, that trying to enlist the concerns that were stated earlier, trying to incorporate them to this, and the cost factor that's associated with that would make more sense in making a decision, having a way to solve the problems, okay, based on this site, in comparison to knocking the thing down and starting all over. Knowing what those cost factors are in advance, you know, I mean, we as utilizers or users or visitors, you know, we don't see all of these things. But like Mr. Ferris said, I don't think that renovation is near as expensive as starting over.
You guys are welcome, again, that information's out there, including on the renovation, which does have numbers that were attached to it. And you're welcome to go out there and look. It's on the homepage under Century 2. And if you can't find it, email me and we'll send it directly to you. But that information is out there. So when I use 252 as a number, that's where that comes from. But like in everything, when you look down the list, you can make your decisions on what you want or don't want as part of that.
Sure.
I'm very happy that those numbers exist, and, you know, frankly, they're just not, you can't expect the majority of the voters to go out and do that research themselves. They're not being told, you know, you're telling me one-on-one, you know, just a few yards away of, this is how you find that information, this is where it's at. Here's a list of everything. That has to be presented, you know? No one's gonna get that information unless it's presented to them, even if it does already exist, and I don't want anyone's work to be wasted because, you know, it wasn't accessible. You know, having it on a website is accessible for, if you don't have a computer at home, if you don't know what that website is, if you can't come to DAB meetings, you need to get that information before you know, place a ballot that says, yeah, I'm willing to pay more every single day for this thing, you know. It's just, it has to be presented.
I think what you'll see as their final report, those numbers are out there and we will present them. We're also currently working with a local architect to look at other renovation options and see if they have some different numbers than the ones we've gotten to make sure, again, just a proof of concept. And we don't have that back yet. Should have it within a couple weeks.
I would just reiterate what Nisia said, that when I even posted it on my Facebook page today, just to kind of get feedback that I can bring to you all today, I felt like a lot of the questions that I was getting could have definitely been, like the doubts or the fears or just kind of the, is this really the best thing for us to do one way or another? A lot of that could have been alleviated had that information been, here's the website where you can see all of this information. Have questions, you know, like you did tonight on the slide, and I got that contact information, which I thought was phenomenal. But I think it's gonna work in you all's benefit whenever you present which way you wanna go. I just think transparency and being open, and not to say you all have it, but as open as you can be and making those strides to say, here we are, and here's the information in black and white, I think that's gonna help your decision and the support that you want from the community, either way you go.
I totally agree with you, and I think the mayor's reason for putting this committee together was to take this volumes of information, because literally it's a stack. And that's what they've been working on. So yes, I totally agree with you, and I think as they come forward with their recommendation, that's where it was found.
So I guess we've all talked about different issues. I'm not sure whether or not we're at a point where we're ready to select a scenario or anything along those lines. But I guess a question that I'll go ahead and ask the group is, right now the committee has actually brought to us that said, hey, we've got these significant issues. Not only just the roof leaks and the air conditioning doesn't work, but they're not able to go ahead and actually do the type of performances that we actually have. And they believe that we're actually at a crossroads. First question that I'll kind of actually pose then to the DAB then is whether or not you concur with the idea that we're at a time that it's appropriate to do something. And that's a question I'll ask the DAB.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so that's,
100%.
okay, good consensus there. Does anybody have any other, because we don't have other scenarios, does anybody have any particular feelings on any of the directions or parts of the presentation that they'd like to comment on?
Well, I think Anisha has said it, that we all agree that something has to be done, but there has to be more information before we can ever suggest to a councilman, hey, this is what we believe should happen. Whether we should renovate or whether we should tear it down and build a fresh or build a new. So it's just too many unknowns right now.
Sure.
But I will say though, if say we renovate, but renovation will not solve all the problems, then renovation does not make sense. I will say that.
As well as making the organizations go dark, which would be a
Right,
travesty.
right, exactly. So, new building somewhere else.
Yeah, it sounds like renovation will just make us comfortable
It's a
with what
Band-Aid.
we're offering right now, but it won't expand
Right.
what we can offer.
Right.
Are we entertaining all the options there could possibly be with renovating to accommodate your needs? That's my question,
I mean, one of the main issues with renovating is that there's just no way to accommodate the
so it's not
hour.
possible.
I mean, we would have to take a dark season either way.
Well,
No.
I think you have to look at it from a perspective of not just renovating to meet your needs right now. I think we need to look at it from the point of, for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years.
Exactly.
But you did say you're waiting on another, proposal from another architect, correct? Another firm?
We have another architect looking at the renovation option kind of as a proof of concept, so that we make sure. One of the challenges, as I said, is what are you willing to do to the envelope of the building? So when I talk about the envelope of the building is the roof so what are you willing as a community to do as it relates to that? Because there's some things we have to address as it relates to that and what it looks like. So if we're willing to allow the roof to change, and meaning a box, some people have described it as a shoebox. I don't use that, but if you are willing to make those kind of compromises, then yes, there's ways to address the issues of the hall itself. The challenge is you still have a load-in issue. If you keep the stage to the center of the building, you still have to come up with a loading dock or a loading area that allows you to move. One of the costs that the Broadway shows cost, and this is not a cost that the Symphony or Music Theater sees as much, but the Broadway shows, because they do come on trucks, they look at those costs to push work through the building. So like in a Lion King, again, go to the big show, it's 32 trucks.
So that's the information that you put down on something.
Right.
Verbatim. That's the exact information that, everyone's kind of alluding to, is that if we're thinking big, we're dreaming big, and we want to expand as a community, then if we want to attract these types of shows, it takes this to make it happen, and we don't have that. So that's the kind of.
No, we have data.
Still have it with
We have,
renovation.
we have data, and and these are good recommendations for the committee as they finalize the recommendation, absolutely.
Good.
I think it'd be really nice to have a master site development plan of that entire area, and to visualize exactly what we can have, not what we've missed out on, but what we can have, to get people excited about. People see Century 2, and they know what would happen if you raise it, but what could be there, I think, is what we need to get people excited about.
Yeah, and that's going to be part of, after their recommendation, what the council action may be, is to ask staff to do the master planning of the site and to develop some conceptual ideas. Because again, we've got work, but it only goes to what we call block planning stage.
Let me ask the committee then. What levels of questions or types of consensus would you like to see us reach here with the information we have? I don't think we're to the point right now where we're to say either renovate or build new, but would you at least like us to go ahead and discuss and maybe come to consensus on whether or not we would want to have, maybe not world-class, but at least a regional class facility when we're done regardless? Or what types of questions like that would you like to pose to us?
Well, I'm happy that there's enthusiasm among the DAB. Can you repeat the question again? I'm
So,
sorry.
I mean, right now, we've at least come to at least a consensus that, yes, we agree that something needs to be done. I think there are options that could be out there to patch what we actually have right now, just fix the roof, just go ahead and fix the air conditioning. That's certainly maybe one option that some people might feel comfortable with. Would it be helpful to discuss, maybe at least provide recommendations on what level of end product we would like to have when we do address the situation? I mean, do we want to have at least a regionally significant facility when we're actually done, or do we just want to patch? Is that a level of question that would be helpful?
Yeah, I think our committee is committed to thinking big and thinking far forward into the future. That patchwork at this point is just kicking the ball down, or kicking the can down the road. And as much as possible, we'd like to see an affirmative for the big picture as long down the road as possible.
So I guess that, go ahead.
I think we've provided feedback, that was what we were asking. I'd like to see this closed and move on to this game.
Okay.
There is a football game on.
Fair enough.
You don't want to stay till midnight?
Man. Okay.
Hey, I just had the worst project of my life finished on Saturday, and I'm still not recovered yet.
Fair enough. Is there any objection? Or is there more discussion that you would like to have?
We just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, moving on to item number 8.
Good afternoon, or good evening, excuse me, I'm Scott Knable with the Metropolitan Area Planning Department. I've got 3 zoning items for you today. Item 8 is a request for a planned unit development zone change from current zoning of single-family residential to limited commercial to planned unit development for Whole Truth Tabernacle. They're proposing to construct a multi-use building that would be used for the neighborhood for recreation, education, training, food pantry, clothes closet, other types of ministry to the community. Because the purpose of the building is to serve the immediately surrounding community, the church does not believe that it will require significant parking, and so they're asking that they not be required through this PUD to pave an additional parking area that would be gravel located to the north of the building. Planning staff has recommended that the request be approved, subject to the site being developed in accordance with the site plan that was submitted with the application, and then of course the general provisions that lay out the development standards and administrative standards for the PUD. That'll answer questions. And the applicant is, or the applicant's agent is here if you have questions as well.
I have a question. I think this is a phenomenal idea, but I do have a question because you said that they stated that it would be used for the neighborhood, so they don't believe that they would need additional parking, but it looks like some of the proposed uses, in my opinion, would attract people from outside the neighborhood there. So that's my only concern.
Yeah, I think their point was is that they don't feel like it gets used often enough to be required to pave it. I think they are providing the required spaces, it's just they're providing overflow, if you will, as gravel.
Oh, so there's still parking spaces, it's just not. Okay.
This is behind the church.
That's correct, yeah, the gravel lot would be to the north on the back side of the church from 21st Street.
So there wouldn't be any traffic issues per 21st Street then.
Any questions from the public? Okay, bring it back to the board. Any other discussion? Been moved? Second? Take your pick on the second.
I didn't get either one.
Dan moved? Yep. Fair enough. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay. Item 9 is a zone change request. located near the intersection of Washington and Lincoln. The current property zoning is MF 29 multifamily residential. The request is to general commercial. The proposal is to redevelop the property in conjunction with property that the applicant already owns north of the application area, which is presently zoned general commercial. The site is in an area where you have a pretty significant mixture of uses from commercial and industrial to residential. And we have seen a number of rezoning requests, including the last time I was here, right around the corner from here for general commercial zoning. Staff is recommending that this request be approved, and I'll stand for questions.
Any questions from the board? Questions from the public? Bring it back to the board. Is there a motion? Question?
This obviously was released to the surrounding area. Is there any feedback from that?
We received no comments from anybody that was in the notification area.
Is there any plans for what to do with that?
The application itself, I apologize, I'm filling in on this one. The application itself, I looked through the file, it doesn't say specifically what it is, and so I'm guessing not. I'm guessing that it's just, they own some vacant land to the north, and they feel like that they bought the land to the south, and that it, you know, wanted to all be commercial development as opposed to a mixture of commercial and residential.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next.
The third request that I have for you today is a little bit further down Lincoln at George Washington as opposed to Washington. This particular site has been known for a long time as the Boulevard Plaza Shopping Center. And it's, for those of you who are familiar with it, it is long since seen its heyday as a retail shopping center and has been recently acquired. And the new owner is wanting to redevelop the property and to add the ability to do office and warehousing uses there. And so they're asking for a zone change from the limited commercial district to the office warehouse district. There are a number of things that potentially could occur in the limited commercial district that aren't allowed in office warehouse. The key ones being medical service and restaurant, which would no longer be permitted uses in the existing zoning. But I suspect there's plenty of property that is zoned for those uses in this general vicinity. Again, this is another area with a pretty significant mixture of uses along the, in this case, the George Washington Boulevard corridor. This area actually is identified in our comprehensive plan as an area where we think that new employment might occur through business services, office, warehousing, those sorts of things. So this request is consistent with that designation in the comprehensive plan. Staff is recommending approval, and I'll answer your questions.
Can you repeat, you said this area is identified as the approval?
It's in the comprehensive plan as an area where we think it's like. Yes, that's correct. City and county.
When you say warehousing, so looking at the codes online, that, it says self-service storage, is it limited to just that, or is it?
It is not, no. You, in an office warehouse, you can do other types of warehousing. You can do business wholesale services. So it would not just be limited to the personal items rented on a monthly basis. You could have a business that was in the warehouse business that, you know, was open there permanently, full-time.
That's really their intent, is they want to rezone this so that they can have a business that has heating, air conditioning, and do the kind of stuff that they do. They need office warehouse instead of limited market.
And I can, just as an aside, we often get requests from business service type functions, like you said, heating, plumbing, roofing, those sorts of things, wanting to locate in properties that are zoned limited commercial, which they're not allowed to. So there probably is a market for that.
Very good. Any other questions?
Are you thinking as an agent or just general?
Ma'am, I'm Greg Ferris. I am the agent for the applicant. I'd be glad to answer any other questions.
Get your steps in, get your steps in.
Are there any questions or comments from the public?
Well,
Please.
I live down, Janice Ridge, 619 Greenwood. I live down the street not too far, and there's a tiny bit of retail still in there, not very much, like there's a dollar store, and I think there's still a hobby shop. But does that mean they're gonna be moving, or?
Ma'am, again, I'm Greg Ferris, agent for the applicant. No, yes, Dollar General for sure is staying. Some of the other may or may not be staying. They're not trying to move anybody out. They're trying to fill those, there's a lot of vacant space. So they're trying to redevelop the vacant space as opposed to throwing out the existing space. A developer has purchased this, and that developer's goal is to have 100% occupancy, so it doesn't make sense to throw somebody out if you want 100% occupancy.
Well, I know the former owner died here about a year ago, and he really let it go downhill.
It's not in good shape.
It's in very bad shape, but I remember when you could go in there and you could buy almost anything, you didn't really have to go out and drive miles, and it'd be wonderful to have more retail there again.
This particular developer does some retail. There may be a market for other retail, but I'm just gonna be honest with you, I wouldn't expect a lot of new retail. The way the market has gone in retail is it's congregating more in different areas. It's unfortunate, but, this will clean up that area, get it active again, and I think it will be very beneficial to the neighborhood because of that.
So, what kind of has me iffy about the office warehouse is are the other ways it could be used? Not what it's being suggested as being utilized for, if we do approve, if it does get approved. The limited manufacturing, what kind of uses go into limited manufacturing?
Sure.
Yeah, the limited manufacturing in a office warehouse district is going to require an office as a front, and so it would be a similar impact to a warehouse. Limited manufacturing isn't permitted in the larger scale like the Spirit Air Systems or others that you might think of until you get into the industrial zoning classification.
So then that'll be like height, there would be like height limitations on buildings?
No, the office warehouse district allows, actually allows less height than the limited commercial district. So you'd actually be establishing a district that has a 60-foot height limitation instead of an 80-foot height limitation, which is the current one.
I'm just thinking of the area I live in. We have office spaces, and then they have their manufacturing buildings right next to them.
Mhm.
And it just sticks out like a sore thumb to me. And so to put that right in front, or in the corner of Lincoln and Washington, when you have a lot of retail, you have Dairy Queen, you have the Cox building, all those speak to retail to me. And so to stick something like that there, to me, would be off-putting. And it almost suggests that they're gonna try to change the area. So that was a relevant question on if the retail was moving out. Cause that's what my thoughts were when I read this. And so, I don't know, I'm iffy on the whole change because of what it could turn into.
Any other discussion? It's my own input. I would concur with the idea of the retail trends, and my own personal thought is trying to revitalize this area and make it usable space is a wonderful thing, but it's my own 2 cents. That noted, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Well, I didn't want to
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Very good. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. With that, I believe we're now to board agenda, item 11. Any updates, issues, and reports? How about this? We'll start at this end, because that's our habit.
There's Martin Luther King program coming up at Calvary Baptist Church on January the 19th at 7:00 p.m. So if you're free, stop on by. We'd love to have you there. The Men of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is hosting. It's free to get in. So.
Very cool.
Okay, the library announcement has already been made. So spread the word about the after hours computer lab. My other announcement would have been, it's called Books and Over Balls. It's a tutoring program that, is college athletic and academic prep program where they'll do ACT preparation, tutoring, homework help, and they give some information on NCAA and NAIA clearinghouse regulations for the athletes. So they're advertising heavily to the students, and it's been going since I feel like November of last year, but it's gaining momentum. It is Mondays and Wednesdays, 6:45 to 8 p.m. All sessions held at Chester Lewis, 1845 North Chautauqua. So if you have any students that are middle schoolers and high schoolers that need tutoring and all these services, please send them our way.
And it's in the district one newsletter under youth activities.
Yeah. And tutors, if you want to tutor, we need tutors as well.
Very good. I don't have anything.
January 19th is also the MLK Parade, so we want to encourage people to come out and attend that as well. And also on the 19th is the Women's March Air Capital. It'll be happening downtown as well. There are going to be a lot of speakers, and they're going to be talking about issues that really affect women. So we really want people to come out and attend that as well.
Very good.
So January 19th. Mm-hmm.
I don't think I have any.
What? Very good.
Correction, mine is January 18th, not the 19th. So now you can do both.
Very good.
Well, I have a few things I'll run through really quick because Dan has given me the eye. You have a letter from our District 1 appointee to the Animal Control Advisory Board. Please just review that. You can let me know what you think about it whenever that comes about. TNR ordinance is not coming up tomorrow or soon, I believe, so definitely check that out and read into it. Tomorrow is a big day for the city, so we will select a new vice mayor. We will say goodbye to Councilmember Meitzner as he goes across the street. We will also appoint a new council member for District 2. And there's 5 options to choose from. Councilmember Blueball and I met with all 5 candidates today, so today was a long day. We will also be looking at 2019 water and sewer rates. That was a source of a lot of interest for the community. The Wichita Ice Center, there's a solution that will be brought up tomorrow. We got a lot of emails about that. If you have noticed, on 21st and Grove, the Founders Grove signs are up, so Commerce Bank is now closed. Founders Grove should be open soon. WSU Tech, of course, is still offering the scholarship from District 1. If you live in District 1, it's the opportunity to get help with tuition. Again, those jobs are awesome, so you can go from being unemployed, underemployed, to making $50,000 plus a year, working at Spirit or Textron, so that is a great opportunity for those who need it. Our next Taking Action on Violence meeting will be in February. It will be hosted by our young people, so we've been kind of making this work as adults, but our young people let us know that they need to be there, and they are taking the lead. It is the Progeny Group. So they are awesome. They're putting that together. I believe it's February 23rd. I don't have the time. Camila? 4 to 6, February 23rd. We'll get you a flyer once that's done. January 10th is a housing social media town hall. If you have input onto our housing, please participate in that. That'll be on Facebook and Twitter. I also told you that 9th Street might be done before Christmas. As you can see, it's not. So the cold and the holiday kind of slowed down progress, but it will be done pretty soon, and it's looking really good.
Use it every day.
Yep. And with that, I was going to propose to you all, I don't need an answer today, but as we've looked at the DAB board and training, proposing an annual retreat, which would compose of maybe some snacks, a tour of the district for those who have not been all around District 1, it's pretty big, as well as a refresher. So you all had some great training on zoning, but we'll probably have 1 or 2 new DAB members coming on, so just a refresher to keep that fresh in your mind. But wanted to propose that to you. If you like it, let me know. If you don't, let me know, and kind of go from there.
That'd be neat.
That's all I have.
You mentioned candidates. Are the candidates known?
Yeah.
I'm showing ignorance. Forgive me. Who are they?
So there were 7 that interviewed with District 2. I went to that meeting with Councilmember Clay Cone. And it is down to, hopefully I don't forget anybody, Daniel Rutherford, Chuck Schmidt, Marcy Gregory, Dave Babbage, and Becky Tuttle.
Nice job.
Yeah, worked out today.
Very cool. Anything else?
So Camila is holding up. So we have the National Day of Racial Healing on January 22nd. That will be at the Mid-American Indian Center
6 p.m.
at 6 o'clock. That's part of our real initiative with the city. So race, equity, and leadership, working with Beyond Tolerance and the Kellogg Foundation.
And then all park and rec classes resume in the next 2 weeks.
All of the park and rec classes will resume in the next 2 weeks.
MLK Day of Service with Wichita Habitat for Humanity.
MLK Day of Service with Wichita Habitat for Humanity. I went to that last year. It's pretty cool. I didn't have to do much because there was so many people there. I think I hammered in 3 boards and that's about it. I helped carry one of the frames, but the houses that we're building this year will be in District 1.
Cool.
What's the day and time?
21st.
So, to be all MLK programs, every single one is listed on WSU Diversity and Inclusion website. It's beautifully linked to every single one, and there's time to kind of show your face at all, because they are doing January 21st, 8 to noon in the Wall Building, but then the noon at the MLK annual service on Monday at Wichita Metroplex is renowned artist Marvin Winans will be here. There are $5 budgets if you want to support the TCAM event on Saturday.
Isn't our
The only cost, most groups are asking for offerings, the only cost is for the TCAM event is to have the button.
Do you know if Governor-elect Kelly is speaking at the TCAM event?
She actually was invited to speak at Chapel Hill on this event too.
Okay.
All right. Without anything else, I'll take another motion.
Motion to close this meeting.
So moved, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.